Hi, my name is Emily Carter. I'm 22 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a college student studying psychology at the University of Texas. I have always loved learning new things, and English is one of my favorite subjects. But despite my love for English, I struggled with speaking it fluently. Not because I didn't know the words, but because I overthought every single conversation. If you're someone who understands English but struggles to speak because of fear, self-doubt, or just thinking too much, then my story is for you. I want to share my personal journey, how overthinking held me back, how I felt trapped in my own mind, and most importantly, how I finally broke free and started enjoying English conversations without fear. I used to think that speaking English fluently meant I had to say everything perfectly. I worried about grammar, pronunciation, and whether I was making mistakes. Every time I had to speak, my mind would flood with questions. What if I say the wrong word? What if people laugh? What if I sound stupid? These thoughts kept me from expressing myself freely, and as a result, I stayed quiet even when I had something to say. It wasn't just in class. I struggled everywhere. At a coffee shop, if I had to order, I would rehearse my sentence in my head multiple times before speaking. If someone asked me a question, I would panic, trying to form the perfect response. And in group discussions, I stayed silent, even when I knew the answer. It felt like I was trapped in an invisible prison made of my own thoughts. The turning point, a simple but powerful realization one day. I was in my English class when my professor, Dr. Matthews, asked a simple question. Why do we speak? Everyone gave different answers. To communicate, to express our thoughts, to connect with others. Then he said something that changed everything for me. Speaking is about connection, not perfection. That one sentence hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that I had been approaching English conversations the wrong way. I had been treating them like a test instead of a natural human interaction. People don't care about perfect grammar. They care about what you're saying. That day, I made a decision. I was going to stop overthinking and start enjoying conversations. But it wasn't easy. It took effort, practice, and a complete change in mindset. Here's exactly what I did. Step 1. Letting go of perfection. The first thing I had to do was accept that mistakes are part of learning. I told myself, it's okay if I make a mistake. It's okay if I don't find the perfect word. As long as I can communicate, that's what matters. To prove this to myself, I started observing native English speakers. To my surprise, even they made mistakes. They hesitated, repeated words, and sometimes used the wrong grammar, but they kept going. I realized that fluency isn't about never making mistakes. It's about not letting mistakes stop you. Step 2. Speaking without rehearsing. One of my biggest problems was that I always rehearsed what I was going to say in my head before speaking. This made my speech sound unnatural and robotic. To break this habit, I started practicing spontaneous speaking. I would set a timer for 2 minutes and talk about any random topic without stopping. At first, it felt uncomfortable, but over time, it helped me get used to speaking naturally without planning every word. Step 3. Thinking in English. Overthinking often happens because we translate our thoughts from our native language to English. I realized that if I wanted to speak English more naturally, I had to start thinking in English. To practice this, I made small changes in my daily life. If I was walking to class, I would describe what I saw in English in my mind. Instead of writing my to-do list in my native language, I started writing it in English. Slowly, English started becoming a natural part of my thought process. Step 4. Joining conversations even when I wasn't ready. In the past, I avoided group discussions because I was afraid of saying something wrong. But I realized that the only way to get better was to participate, even if I felt nervous. I started small. If a group of classmates were talking about a topic I knew, I would add a simple comment. Sometimes it was just one sentence, but each time I did it, my confidence grew. I also forced myself to ask questions. If I didn't understand something, instead of staying silent, I would say, "Can you explain that again?" This helped me feel more involved and made conversations feel less intimidating. Step 5. Finding a speaking partner. One of the best decisions I made was finding a speaking partner. My friend Olivia, who is also a student, agreed to practice English conversations with me every day. We made a rule: no fear, no judgment, just talking. We would meet for coffee and have casual conversations about anything: our classes, our weekend plans, even silly things like our favorite TV shows. The more we practiced, the more natural speaking English felt. Step 6. Learning to enjoy the process. I used to see speaking English as a challenge, but I decided to change my mindset. Instead of worrying about whether I was speaking correctly, I focused on having fun. I started watching English TV shows and mimicking the dialogue. I played word games with my friends. I even started singing along to English songs without worrying about the pronunciation. The more fun I had, the less I overthought. The results: a newfound confidence. After months of practicing these steps, I started noticing a huge difference. I no longer hesitated before speaking. I felt more confident in class discussions. I stopped translating in my head. And most importantly, I started enjoying English conversations instead of fearing them. One of my proudest moments was when I had to give a presentation in front of my class. Before, I would have panicked. But this time, I reminded myself, speaking is about connection, not perfection. I spoke naturally, and even though I made a few small mistakes, I didn't let them shake my confidence. After the presentation, my professor smiled and said, "Great job, Emily. You spoke with confidence." That moment proved to me that all my efforts were worth it. Building real connections through English conversations. After that moment in class when my professor praised my confidence, something shifted inside me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just learning English, I was living it. But I knew that confidence could disappear if I didn't keep practicing. So, I set a new goal for myself: to build real connections using English. I realized that language is not just about words, it's about people. The more I engaged in conversations, the easier it became to stop overthinking. Here's how I made English a natural part of my life. Step 7. Talking to strangers and practicing in real life. One of my biggest fears was talking to strangers in English. Even though I lived in the US, I often hesitated to start conversations. I was comfortable talking to my friends, but what about ordering food at a restaurant? What about small talk with classmates I didn't know well? To overcome this, I set a small challenge for myself: talk to at least one new person every day. At first, it was just small interactions. Asking a barista at a cafe, "Hey, what's your favorite drink on the menu?" Complimenting a classmate, "I love your jacket." "Where did you get it?" Chatting with a cashier, "How's your day going?" These small conversations help me realize that people don't care about my grammar. They care about my energy. If I smiled and spoke with confidence, people responded positively. One day, I met a woman named Lisa at a bookstore. I asked her if she had any book recommendations, and we ended up talking for 15 minutes. That was the moment I realized I was no longer overthinking conversations. I was enjoying them. Step 8. Expanding my comfort zone. The more I practiced, the more I wanted to challenge myself. I started joining student events and clubs where I had to interact in English. I joined the debate club, even though I was nervous. At first, I fumbled with my words, but my teammates encouraged me. I realized that making mistakes in a debate wasn't the end of the world. In fact, some of my American teammates also struggled with expressing their thoughts clearly. That made me feel less alone. I also joined a book club where we discussed novels in English. At first, I was shy, but then I remembered my professor's words. Speaking is about connection, not perfection. So, I started sharing my thoughts, even if they weren't perfectly structured. The more I spoke, the more comfortable I became. Step 9. Embracing mistakes as learning opportunities. One thing I noticed was that native English speakers never stress over small mistakes. If they say something wrong, they laugh, correct themselves, and move on. But I had always been so hard on myself. One day, I said, "I didn't knew that," instead of, "I didn't know that." My friend Olivia laughed and said, "Emily, that's so cute." But it's, "I didn't know." Instead of feeling embarrassed, I laughed too. I realized that mistakes don't define me. They help me grow. So I stopped fearing them. From then on, I welcomed corrections instead of feeling bad about them. I even told my friends, "If I say something wrong, just correct me." Instead of avoiding conversations, I started using them as practice sessions. Step 10. Changing my internal dialogue. I used to tell myself, "What if I say something wrong?" But now I asked myself, "What if this conversation goes well?" This small change in mindset made a huge difference. Before every conversation, instead of imagining failure, I imagined success. I pictured myself speaking fluently and connecting with people. And guess what? My confidence grew because I was no longer feeding my fears. The day I knew I had overcome overthinking, one day, I had an important interview for an internship. A year ago, I would have been terrified. But this time, I reminded myself, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to communicate. I have practiced enough. I'm ready. If I make mistakes, it's okay. I'll keep going. During the interview, I spoke naturally. I didn't overthink my answers. I didn't pause too long or translate in my head. I just spoke. And you know what? I got the internship. That day, I knew. I was no longer the girl who feared English conversations. I was someone who embraced them. Final advice: how you can stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations. If you feel stuck in your own thoughts like I did, here's what I want you to remember. Speaking is about connection, not perfection. People care more about what you say than how perfect your grammar is. Stop rehearsing in your head. Just speak. The more you think, the harder it gets. Think in English. The less you translate, the more naturally you'll speak. Start small. Talk to cashiers, classmates, and strangers in simple conversations. Join clubs or activities where you have to speak English. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Laugh at your mistakes. They are proof that you are learning. Change your mindset. Instead of thinking, "What if I mess up?" ask yourself, "What if I do great?" It makes me so happy to share my journey with you because I know exactly how it feels to struggle with English conversations. If you're still doubting yourself, still overthinking, still feeling stuck, then let me tell you one last thing. The only way to stop overthinking is to start speaking. I don't mean speaking when you feel ready, because the truth is, you'll never feel 100% ready. I mean speaking right now. Even if you're nervous, even if you make mistakes, even if your voice shakes. That's how I did it, and that's how you will too. One more story. The moment I realized English was now a part of me. A few months after getting my internship, I had a moment that truly proved to me that I had changed. I was sitting in a coffee shop, working on my laptop, when a girl next to me said, "Hey, do you mind if I sit here?" I looked up and smiled. "Of course! Go ahead." She introduced herself as Mia, a university student like me. She had just moved to the US from South Korea and was struggling with English. As we talked, she told me she was afraid of speaking because she didn't want to make mistakes. I smiled because I knew exactly how she felt. "You know," I told her, "I used to be just like you. I was scared of speaking, scared of people judging me. But then I realized something. Nobody cares about my mistakes. They care about my ideas, my energy, my personality." She listened carefully, her eyes wide. "But what if I say something wrong?" I laughed. "Then you laugh, correct yourself, and keep going. Mistakes don't matter. The only thing that matters is that you're trying." She thought about it for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll try to speak more." And in that moment, I saw my old self in her, the girl who overthought everything, who hesitated, who doubted herself. And I realized something important. I wasn't that girl anymore. I had transformed. And now, I was helping someone else do the same. I want to leave you with one final thought. A challenge, actually. I challenge you to speak English today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. Just one small moment where you push past the fear and just speak. Maybe you order coffee in English. Maybe you ask a classmate how their day is going. Maybe you call a friend and speak for 5 minutes without switching to your native language. It doesn't matter how small the step is. It matters that you take it. Because once you do, you'll realize something powerful. Overthinking is just a habit, and habits can be changed. I know because I changed mine. I went from being the girl who sat in the back of the classroom, afraid to raise her hand, to the girl who leads conversations with confidence. I went from avoiding English to loving it. And if I can do it, you can too. As I sat in the same coffee shop where I once met Mia, I thought about how far I had come. But I wasn't the only one who had struggled with overthinking English conversations. My friend Chris had his own journey, one that was just as inspiring. Chris and I met during our first year at university. He was from Brazil, and just like me, he had moved to the US for his studies. We connected immediately because we both understood the struggle of trying to fit into a new culture while battling the fear of speaking English. One day, after class, we sat in the campus library, and he finally opened up about his struggles. "I feel stuck," he admitted. "I know English. I can write. I can read. I even understand everything. But when it's time to speak, my mind just freezes." I nodded because I had been there too. "So, what happens in your head when you try to speak?" I asked. He sighed. "I start thinking too much. I hear myself making mistakes, and then I get embarrassed. So I just stop talking." I smiled because I knew exactly how to help him. "You know what helped me?" I said. "I stopped making English a big deal. I started speaking without worrying about mistakes. You should try it too." He frowned. "But how?" And that's when his real journey began. Chris's first step, breaking the silence, the first thing Chris needed to do was start speaking more, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. So we made a deal. For 1 week, every time we met, he had to speak only in English. No Portuguese, no switching back when he felt stuck. He had to find a way to express himself using only the words he knew. At first, he struggled. He paused a lot, searched for words, and even laughed at himself. But after just a few days, something amazing happened. He stopped hesitating. "I'm thinking less now," he said after the first week. I just say what's in my head. That's the secret, I told him. The less you think, the better you speak. The fear of looking stupid, one of Chris's biggest fears, was sounding stupid. I don't want people to laugh at me, he admitted. I knew that fear all too well. But what if I told you that nobody actually cares? I said. Think about it. When someone makes a mistake in your language, do you laugh at them? He thought for a moment. No, I usually just try to understand them. Exactly, I said. That's how people feel when they hear you speak English. They don't care about small mistakes. They just want to understand you. That changed everything for him. From that day on, he stopped worrying about how he sounded and focused on what he wanted to say. Pushing himself in real-life situations, Chris knew he had to push himself into more English conversations. So he started small, ordering food in English without hesitation, asking for directions on campus, starting random small talk with classmates. One of his biggest breakthroughs happened at a party. He had always avoided social events because he was afraid of conversations. But that night, he made a promise to himself. I will talk to at least 3 new people. At first, he felt awkward, but after the first conversation, something clicked. They didn't judge me, he told me the next day. They just talked to me like normal, and I actually had fun. That was the moment he realized, speaking English is not about perfection, it's about connection. The confidence test, a job interview, the real test came when Chris applied for a part-time job. He was nervous about the interview because he had never spoken English in such a formal setting before. What if I mess up? He asked me the night before. I smiled. Then you smile, correct yourself, and keep going. The next day, after his interview, he texted me. I did it! Not only had he answered all the questions with confidence, but he also got the job. A few weeks later, we were sitting in the same coffee shop where I had once met Mia. Chris took a sip of his coffee, looked at me, and said, You know what? I don't even think about speaking English anymore. I just do it. I laughed. That's because you finally understand the truth. Overthinking is the only thing stopping you. He nodded. I wasted so much time being scared. But now I realize, speaking English is just like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Chris's advice to anyone struggling with English conversations. Chris's journey taught me that anyone, no matter how afraid they feel, can overcome overthinking. Here's what he learned along the way. Speak even when you're not ready. The only way to improve is to start now. Make mistakes. They don't define you. They help you grow. Force yourself into conversations. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. Stop translating. Just say what comes to your mind, even if it's not perfect. Remember that nobody cares about small mistakes. People just want to connect with you. A few weeks after Chris shared his breakthrough with me, something unexpected happened that proved just how much he had changed. One evening, we were walking across campus when we saw a group of international students sitting on the grass, talking in mixed languages. Some were speaking Spanish, some Mandarin, some French. It was a beautiful mix of cultures, and in the middle of it all, I noticed a girl sitting quietly, looking a little lost. Chris noticed her too. Without hesitation, he walked over and said, Hey, do you speak English? The girl looked up, surprised. A little, she said in a soft voice. Chris smiled. Don't worry, I used to be afraid of speaking too. But I learned something important. Nobody cares about mistakes. They just want to understand you. Her eyes widened, as if she wasn't expecting that. Where are you from? He asked. Turkey, she said hesitantly. My English. Not good. Chris laughed. Trust me, it's better than you think. Just try. What's your name? She took a deep breath and said, Layla. That's a beautiful name, Chris said warmly. See? You just spoke in English, and you did great. Layla smiled for the first time. I stood back, watching, and something clicked in my mind. Chris had become the kind of person who once helped him. He wasn't just a student struggling with English anymore. He was now helping others overcome their fears. And that's when I knew. His journey had truly come full circle. The moment it all became natural, a few days later, we were at our favorite coffee shop, the same one where we had shared so many conversations about fear and self-doubt. Chris took a sip of his coffee, leaned back, and said, You know what? I don't even think about English anymore. I smiled. What do you mean? I mean, when I first started, I had to push myself to speak. But now, I don't even realize I'm doing it. It just happens. That was it. The final stage of confidence. The moment when English stops feeling like a foreign language and just becomes part of who you are. Chris had reached it, and I knew that if he could do it, so could anyone. A few months later, something happened that truly proved how much Chris had changed. We were in the university cafeteria, eating lunch, when Chris suddenly checked his phone and gasped. What happened? I asked, concerned. He looked up at me with wide eyes. I got an invitation for a panel discussion. A panel discussion? What kind? It's an event for international students. They want me to speak about my experience learning English and adjusting to life in the U.S. I blinked. Wait, speak? Like, in front of people? Chris nodded, his face a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Yeah, in front of a whole audience. I leaned forward. And? Are you going to do it? He exhaled deeply. A few months ago, I would have said no. But now, I think I want to try. The biggest challenge yet. Speaking on stage. For the next few days, Chris prepared for the event. At first, he wrote down everything he wanted to say, but then he realized something. I don't want to memorize a speech, he told me. I just want to speak naturally, like a conversation. That was a huge shift in mindset. Before, Chris was afraid of making mistakes. Now he was focused on expressing himself. And when the big day arrived, I was in the audience, watching proudly as my friend stood on stage, microphone in hand. I used to overthink every English conversation, he told the crowd. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of embarrassing myself. But then I realized, the more I spoke, the easier it got. The secret isn't perfect grammar, it's confidence. The audience nodded, some taking notes, others listening intently. Chris continued, If you're struggling with speaking English, don't wait until you feel ready. Start now. Push yourself, make mistakes, speak anyway, because one day you'll wake up and realize you're not thinking about it anymore. You're just speaking. When he finished, the audience clapped. A long, loud applause. Chris had done it. Not only had he conquered his fear, but now he was inspiring others to do the same. After the event, we sat outside the auditorium, the evening breeze cool against our skin. Chris leaned back on the bench, looking up at the sky. I still can't believe I just did that, he said, shaking his head with a smile. I nudged him. Believe it. You're not the same person who was afraid to speak a few months ago. He exhaled, nodding slowly. You're right. I feel free. And that was it. The final transformation. Chris wasn't just a student learning English anymore. He was a confident English speaker. And that's when I realized, this journey never really ends. Because once you stop overthinking, once you start speaking with confidence, English isn't just a language you learn. Hello, my dear friends. Today, we're diving deep into a common struggle: overthinking in English conversations. You understand English, you can read it, and maybe even write well. But when it's time to speak, your brain freezes. You hesitate. You analyze every word before saying it. And by the time you form a sentence, the conversation has already moved on. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Many English learners struggle with this, but the good news is that you can overcome it. You don't need to be perfect to enjoy conversations. The key is to shift your mindset, build confidence, and practice effectively. In this detailed guide, I'll take you through practical steps to stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations. Now, let's explore this in different styles so you can absorb the tips in a way that resonates with you. Style 1. The Step-by-Step Guide. Let's go step by step, breaking down the problem and finding the best solutions. Step 1. Understand why you overthink before solving a problem. We need to understand it. Here are the main reasons why people overthink when speaking English. Fear of making mistakes. You're scared that you'll say something wrong and people will judge you. Trying to translate everything. Your brain wants to form sentences in your native language first, then translate them into English, which takes too long. Focusing on grammar too much. You hesitate because you're trying to apply grammar rules in real time. Low confidence. You don't trust your speaking skills, so you doubt yourself before speaking. Lack of practice. If you don't use English often, your brain isn't used to thinking in English. Step 2. Shift your mindset. Here's how you can change the way you think about speaking English. Accept that mistakes are normal. Even native speakers make mistakes. Focus on communication, not perfection. Think in English. Instead of translating, train your brain to think directly in English. Use simple sentences. You don't need complex grammar to express yourself. Speak naturally and comfortably. Focus on the message, not the words. Your goal is to be understood, not to use fancy words. Step 3. Practice in a smart way. Talk to yourself in English. Describe your daily activities out loud. Use the shower technique. Speak English when you're alone, like in the shower or while driving. Record yourself. Listen to how you sound and improve. Have conversations with AI or language partners. Apps like ChatGPT, HelloTalk, and Tandem can help you practice. Step 4. Get comfortable with silence. It's okay to pause while speaking. Native speakers do it too. Instead of panicking, use phrases like, "Let me think for a second." "That's a good question." "I'm not sure, but maybe." Step 5. Make English a daily habit. The more you expose yourself to English, the more comfortable you'll become. Watch movies and mimic dialogues. Listen to English podcasts daily. Surround yourself with English content. Style 2. The conversational dialogue, podcast style. Imagine you're listening to a podcast where two friends, Alex and Sarah, are discussing this topic. Alex: "Hey Sarah, my friend has this problem. He understands English but overthinks too much when speaking. He overcame this problem." Sarah: "Oh, that's great. How did he do it?" Alex: "First, he realized that perfection is impossible. He used to think he needed to speak like a native speaker, but now he focuses on communication." Sarah: "That makes sense. I used to overthink because I was afraid of making mistakes." Alex: "Exactly. He started speaking without worrying about grammar. The funny thing is, once he stopped focusing on being perfect, his English actually improved." Sarah: "So how did he practice?" Alex: "He talked to himself in English. He would describe everything around him, like, 'I'm making coffee. The weather is nice today.' Sarah, that's smart. I do that sometimes when I'm alone. It really helps. Alex, and another thing, he stopped translating from his native language. Instead, he started thinking in English directly. Sarah, that's a game changer. I used to get stuck because I was translating everything. Alex, yeah, so the key is to practice daily, stop fearing mistakes, and just enjoy the conversation. Sarah, I love this approach. No more overthinking, just speaking. Style 3, the personal story. My name is Alex, and I want to share how I stopped overthinking and started enjoying English conversations. A few years ago, I struggled a lot. Every time I tried to speak, my mind would race. Is this the right word? Am I using the correct tense? What if they don't understand me? These thoughts made me freeze. One day, I met a guy who spoke English fluently, even though his grammar wasn't perfect. I asked him, "How do you do it?" His answer changed everything. He said, "I stopped worrying about being perfect. I just speak." That day, I decided to change my approach. Here's what I did. Style 4, the motivational approach. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror, preparing to speak English. Your mind is filled with doubts. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. Tell yourself, I am confident. I am improving every day. I can speak English fluently. Speaking English is like learning to ride a bike. The first few times, you fall. But if you keep going, you'll eventually ride with ease. Stop thinking, start speaking. You are already capable. The speak first, think later technique. One of the biggest reasons we overthink is because we try to construct the perfect sentence in our head before speaking. But the truth is, conversation doesn't work like that. Imagine this. You're in a casual conversation with a friend. You're supposed to say something simple like, "I went to the park yesterday. It was really nice." But instead, your brain does this. Should I say "I went" or "I have gone"? What if I forget a word? What if they don't understand me? And before you know it, the moment is gone, and you've said nothing. Solution: speak first, think later. Instead of trying to get the perfect sentence, just start talking. Your brain will catch up. Try this. Say the first thing that comes to mind, even if it's not perfect. Use filler words to give yourself time to think. Well, let me think. I guess. Trust yourself. The more you speak, the better you'll get at forming sentences naturally. The 5-second rule for speaking in English. A lot of people hesitate when speaking English because they're afraid of making mistakes. But here's a simple trick. Whenever someone asks you something in English, count to 5 and just start speaking. Why? Because hesitation makes you doubt yourself. The longer you wait, the more nervous you become. Example: someone asks you, "What do you like to do in your free time?" Instead of waiting, count to 5 and say something, anything. Even if it's simple, "I like reading books and watching movies." The key is to start speaking before your brain tells you to stop. Try this challenge. The next time someone speaks to you in English, don't wait. Start speaking within 5 seconds. How to stop translating in your head. Do you find yourself thinking in your native language first, then trying to translate into English? This is one of the biggest reasons people overthink. Why it happens. Your brain is used to your native language, so it naturally tries to think in it first. Translating takes time, and by the time you're ready to speak, the conversation has moved on. How to fix it. Step 1. Start small. Think in English about everyday things. When you wake up, don't say in your head, "I need to brush my teeth." Instead, say, "I will brush my teeth now." Step 2. Name objects around you in English. Look around and describe things. This is a table. The sky is blue. I have a cup of tea. Step 3. Speak without worrying about perfection. Even if you don't know the exact word, describe it in English instead of translating. For example, instead of struggling with refrigerator, say, that thing that keeps food cold. Try this challenge. For one full day, force yourself to think only in English. How to build confidence in English conversations. Confidence is the secret to fluency. If you believe in yourself, you'll speak better. Step 1. Fake it till you make it, even if you're nervous. Act confident. Stand tall. Speak clearly. Smile. People will believe in you if you believe in yourself. Step 2. Use simple English. Don't try to sound fancy. Simple English is effective English. Instead of saying, I'm experiencing a feeling of exhaustion, just say, I'm tired. Step 3. Talk to yourself in English every day. The more you practice alone, the more confident you'll be with others. Try this challenge. Stand in front of a mirror and introduce yourself in English. Do this every day for a week. How to make English conversations fun. A big mistake learners make is thinking of English as a subject instead of a language. Talk about topics you love. If you love movies, talk about your favorite films in English. If you love sports, discuss your favorite team. Play English games. Try 20 questions with a friend. Play word association games. Sing English songs. Singing improves pronunciation and fluency. Try this challenge. Choose one fun way to practice English today. Final words. Stop worrying. Start speaking. Overthinking is the biggest enemy of fluency. But now, you have the tools to stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations. Quick summary. Speak first. Think later. Use the 5-second rule. Stop translating and think in English. Build confidence with daily practice. Make English fun. Now it's your turn. Leave a comment and tell me, what's one English sentence you'll say today without overthinking? Conversation and examples. How to stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations. Emily and Chris discuss overthinking in English conversations. Emily and Chris are sitting in a coffee shop talking about their past struggles with English and how they overcame them. Emily. Chris, I was thinking about your journey with English, and it made me realize so many people are stuck in the same cycle of overthinking. They want to speak, but their brain just won't let them. Chris. Oh, I know that feeling too well. I used to replay conversations in my head 100 times before even opening my mouth. Emily. Exactly. And then, when you finally do speak, you analyze every single word afterward, like, did I say that right? Or, oh no, I made a mistake. Chris. Haha, yes. And the worst part is, native speakers don't even care. They're just happy you're talking to them. Emily. So, how did you stop overthinking? Chris. Honestly, I had to force myself to stop caring about being perfect. I started focusing on communication, not perfection. Example 1. The fear of making mistakes before. Chris is at a restaurant trying to order food. Chris. I want, thinking chicken, no, wait, maybe pasta? How to say this? Pause is too long. Never mind. Waiter. Oh, okay. Chris feels embarrassed and decides not to speak much for the rest of the evening. After, with confidence. Chris. Hi, I'd like some chicken, please. Oh, wait, actually, can I have pasta instead? Waiter. Sure, do you want any sauce with that? Chris. Yes, what do you recommend? Now Chris is speaking naturally, without worrying about mistakes. Example 2. Replacing overthinking with action. Emily. Another thing people do is think too much about grammar while speaking. Chris. Oh yeah, I used to do that all the time. Like, instead of just saying, I go to the store, I would pause and think, wait, should it be I'm going? Or I went? What if I get it wrong? Emily. And by the time you figure it out, the conversation has already moved on. Chris. Exactly. So I started just saying whatever came naturally instead of trying to make it perfect. And guess what? People still understood me. Example 3. Overcoming the what if I sound stupid? Fear before. Chris meets a new classmate. Classmate. Hey, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Chris, thinking too much. From. No, wait. I am from, gets nervous. Sorry, my English is bad. After, with confidence. Classmate. Hey, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Chris. Oh, hey, I'm from Brazil. And you? Chris answers confidently and keeps the conversation going. Chris's final advice. Emily. Okay, if you had to give someone 3 tips to stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations, what would they be? Chris. Oh, that's easy. Speak first, think later. Your brain will catch up, trust me. The more you speak, the faster it becomes natural. Forget about mistakes. People care about what you say, not how perfect it sounds. Focus on the message, not the words. Even if you don't know the exact vocabulary, just explain in simple words. Emily. I love that. And I'll add one more. Have fun. English is not an exam. It's a tool to connect with people. Chris. 100%. Once I started having fun with English, everything changed. How to stop overthinking and start enjoying English conversations. A deep dive conversation between Emily and Chris. Emily and Chris are sitting in a coffee shop, having coffee, and discussing how people can stop overthinking and start speaking English with confidence. Understanding overthinking in English conversations. Emily. You know, Chris, I've noticed something. People who are learning English don't struggle because they don't know enough words. They struggle because they are afraid to speak. Chris. Oh, absolutely. I used to be that person. I knew English in my head, but when it was time to speak, I froze. My mind would go blank, or I'd start analyzing every word before even saying it. Emily. Exactly. It's like you're having 2 conversations, one in your head and one in real life, and the one in your head is full of doubts. Chris. Yeah, my brain used to say things like, what if I say something wrong? What if they don't understand me? What if I look stupid? Emily. And that's where the problem starts. Overthinking. Why do we overthink when speaking English? Emily. Okay, let's break this down. Why do people overthink when speaking English? Chris. I think it comes from a few main fears. Fear of making mistakes. We want to be perfect, but perfection isn't possible in a conversation. Fear of making mistakes. We want to be perfect, but perfection isn't possible in a conversation. Fear of being judged. We think people will laugh or think we're not smart if we make errors. Lack of confidence. We don't trust ourselves to speak fluently, so we hesitate. Fear of not understanding others. We worry that if someone speaks too fast, we won't know how to respond. Emily. Yep. And all these fears make people avoid speaking. Chris. Exactly. And when you avoid speaking, you don't improve. It becomes a cycle. Breaking the overthinking cycle. Step by step, Emily. So what changed for you? How did you go from overthinking to speaking confidently? Chris. It wasn't instant. I had to train my brain to react differently. But here's what really helped me. Step 1. Stop trying to translate everything in your head, Chris. One of my biggest mistakes was trying to translate everything from my native language to English before speaking. That slowed me down and made me overthink. Emily. Yeah, your brain is doing double the work. Instead of just speaking naturally, you're first thinking in your own language, then translating, then worrying if it's correct. Chris. Right. So, I started training myself to think directly in English. Example, thinking in English instead of translating before, overthinking and translating. Chris wants to ask someone for directions, but his mind is translating word by word from Portuguese to English. Chris's mind. Onde fica o banheiro? Wait, onde means where? Fica means is. O banheiro is, bathroom. Chris, after 10 seconds of thinking. Excuse me. Where is, bathroom? After thinking in English directly. Chris's mind. Where is the bathroom? No translation, just direct thinking. Chris, without hesitation. Excuse me, where is the bathroom? Step 2. Speak first, correct later. Emily. So, when you started thinking in English, did your grammar improve instantly? Chris. Not at all. I still made mistakes. But instead of stopping myself, I kept going. Emily. That's so important. People think they need to speak perfectly, but even native speakers make mistakes. Example, speaking without overthinking grammar before, overthinking grammar. Chris is trying to make a simple sentence, but he's afraid of mistakes. Chris's mind. Do I say I have went or I have gone? Ugh, grammar is hard. Maybe I just won't say anything. Chris stays silent and misses the chance to practice. After, speaking first, correcting later. Chris's mind. Okay, I might make a mistake, but I'll just say it. Chris. I have went to the store yesterday. Friend. Oh, you mean I went to the store yesterday? Chris. Smiles. Oh yeah, thanks. I went to the store yesterday. Emily. See? You spoke, and you learned from the conversation instead of just staying silent. Step 3. Change what if I make a mistake to what if I learn something. Chris. This mindset shift was huge for me. Instead of being afraid of mistakes, I started seeing them as a chance to improve. Emily. I love that. It's like when babies learn to walk. They don't stop because they fall. They get up and try again. Example. Accepting mistakes as part of learning Chris's old mindset. What if I make a mistake and embarrass myself? Chris's new mindset. What if I make a mistake and learn from it? Step 4. Start simple, then add more. Emily. Some people overthink because they try to say very complex sentences. Chris. That was me. I wanted to speak like a native speaker immediately, but I was still learning. Emily. So what did you do? Chris. I started with simple sentences and built up. Example, speaking simply first before, trying to be too advanced. Chris. Thinking hard. I want to say, I am deeply fascinated by the complex nature of astrophysics, but I find quantum mechanics more engaging. After, keeping it simple first, then improving. Chris. Start simple. I really like space science, but I like quantum physics more. Later, he learns more vocabulary and improves. Step 5. Focus on communication, not perfection. Emily. This is the final and most important Emily. This is the final and most important step. Just focus on communication. Chris. 100%. If people understand you, that's what matters. Emily. Think about when foreigners speak your native language. Do you judge them for small mistakes? Chris. No, I'm just happy they're trying. Emily. Exactly. People feel the same when you speak English. Final advice. How to practice and stop overthinking. Emily. Okay, Chris. If someone is struggling with overthinking in English, what should they do starting today? Chris. Here's what helped me the most. 1. Practice thinking in English. Narrate your day in English in your head. 2. Speak first, fix later. Focus on getting the message across, not perfect grammar. 3. Use simple sentences first. Don't overcomplicate. Build confidence, then add complexity. Accept mistakes as learning. Every mistake teaches you something new. 5. Speak as much as possible. Talk to friends, practice with a tutor, or even talk to yourself. Emily. That's perfect. And most importantly, enjoy it. Speaking English should feel fun, not scary. Chris. Exactly. The moment you stop worrying and just start talking, English stops being a subject you learn and becomes a part of your life. Emily. Okay, Chris. Let's get practical. How did you practice speaking without overthinking? Chris. I used real-life practice methods that forced me to speak naturally instead of thinking too much. Emily. I love that. Give me some examples. Method 1. The 30-second rule. Speak without preparing. Chris. One of the best exercises I did was the 30-second rule. Emily. What's that? Chris. It's simple. Pick a random topic. Your day, your favorite food, your weekend plans. Speak about it for 30 seconds without stopping and without preparing. No self-correction while speaking. Example, 30-second rule in action. Chris sets a timer for 30 seconds. Topic, my morning routine. Chris. Okay, so I wake up at 7 a.m. First, I brush my teeth. Then, I make coffee because I love coffee. After that, I check my phone for messages. I take a shower and I get ready for my day. Sometimes I listen to music while I get dressed. That's my morning. Timer beeps. Emily. Wow, see? You didn't stop and you didn't overthink. Chris. Exactly. The goal is not perfection, but fluency. Emily. And if you make mistakes, who cares? You're practicing. Method 2. Talk to yourself. Technique. Chris. Another thing that helped me think in English was talking to myself. Emily. Oh, I do that too. How did you do it? Chris. Every time I did something, I described it in English. Example, talking to yourself. Chris is making breakfast. Chris. Okay, I'm making toast. I take the bread and put it in the toaster. Now I wait. I can smell the toast. It's ready. I take butter and spread it on top. It looks good. Emily. That's so smart. It forces your brain to think in English all the time. Chris. Yes. And when you think in English, you don't overthink when speaking. Method 3. Speak with a voice recorder. Trick Emily. What if someone doesn't have a speaking partner? Chris. Easy. Just use a voice recorder. How it works, 1. Pick a topic. Record yourself speaking for 1 minute. 3. Listen to it. Notice your mistakes, but don't feel bad. Just improve next time. Example, voice recorder practice. Chris picks a topic. My favorite hobby. Chris, recording. My favorite hobby is playing soccer. I play soccer every weekend with my friends. It is fun, and it helps me stay active. My favorite team is Manchester United. I love watching soccer matches on TV too. Chris listens to the recording. Chris. Oh, I forgot to say I have played soccer since I was a kid. Next time I'll add that. Emily. Wow, this is like self-correction without pressure. Chris. Exactly. It helps you get comfortable hearing your own voice in English. Method 4. Shadowing. The secret to sounding natural. Emily. Chris, did you ever struggle with pronunciation? Chris. Oh, yes. but I used shadowing to fix it. Emily, what's shadowing? Chris, it's when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say immediately. How to practice. Shadowing 1. Find a short English podcast, movie clip, or YouTube video. 2. Play one sentence at a time. 3. Repeat it exactly how they say it. Same speed, same tone. 4. Keep going until you can match their pronunciation. Example, shadowing practice. Movie clip, hey! How's it going? Chris, repeating. Hey! How's it going? Movie clip, I'm doing great. What about you? Chris, repeating. I'm doing great. What about you? Emily. Wow, this helps with pronunciation and confidence. Chris. Yes, it makes you sound more natural and fluent. How to stop feeling nervous when speaking. Emily. Okay, Chris, we talked about practice, but what if someone feels nervous when speaking? Chris. Great question. Here's what helped me. 1. Shift your mindset. People don't care about your mistakes. Truth. People are not judging you, they are just listening. Example. Think about when a foreigner speaks your language. Do you judge them for small mistakes? No. You're happy they're trying. 2. Slow down. Don't try to speak too fast. Speaking slowly makes you sound more confident. Example, nervous speaking. Hi, you want to talk to you, but I'm anxious. Too fast, sounds unsure. Confident speaking. Hi, I want to talk to you, but I'm a little nervous. Slow and clear, sounds natural. 3. Use filler words to give yourself time to think. Chris. When I was nervous, I didn't know what to say next. So I learned filler words to give myself time. Examples of filler words. Well, let me think. That's a good question. You know, example, using filler words without filler words. Nervous. Chris. I, went to, the store. Awkward pauses. With filler words, confident. Chris. Well, let me think. Oh, yesterday I went to the store. Natural conversation flow. Emily. That's amazing. It makes you sound calm and confident. Final challenge. Speak for 1 minute every day. Emily. Chris, if someone wants to stop overthinking and start speaking, what challenge would you give them? Chris. I challenge them to 1. Pick a topic. Speak for 1 minute without stopping. 3. Do this every day for 1 month. Emily. Wow! If they do that, they'll stop overthinking and start speaking naturally. Chris. Yes! Because confidence comes from speaking, not from waiting.